But with that, let's welcome Giovanni and Amanda. Yay, thank you so much for being here, and thanks for your patience with the technical difficulties. How are you two doing tonight?
All good.
Yes.
So I've already introduced Giovanni in our like non-existent or non-streaming able part at the beginning 15 minutes ago, but I'm going to do a quick little intro for Giovanni one more time. But before I do that, I just want to say a big thank you to all of our funders and our donors for this season. You have helped us make the season what it is today and for the rest of the year. So thank you so much. Amanda is our development coordinator, and she has been working tirelessly on our Giving Tuesday campaign, which is on December 1st. So for all of our donors from the past 2 years, if you are interested in donating again or looking into donating in a different way, you should be getting a newsletter of some sorts today or this week so that you can be donating on December 1st. And for anyone who is willing and able to donate to our wonderful theater company, December 1st is Giving Tuesday. So you'll be hearing more about that and the beautiful campaign that Amanda has developed. So with that, let me introduce Giovanni. So Giovanni, I'm going to not read your entire bio. I'm just going to read a little bit of it so that we can get on to the conversation. So Giovanni is an actor, playwright, and director, and he was the artistic director of Gateway Theater from 2012 to 2019. And at Gateway, Giovanni directed productions of Harvest, Closer Than Ever, Valley Song, and Yoga Play. Prior to Gateway, Giovanni was the artistic director of Cahoots Theater in Toronto. So welcome back for your little visits. And under his tenure, Cahoots produced new works by various artists. Giovanni has performed with theater companies across Canada as well as overseas. And in 2010, his one-man play, A Taste of an Empire, was nominated for 2 Dora Mavor Moore Awards, including Outstanding New Play. His other writing credits also include The Five Vengeances, a comic kung fu adaptation of the Revengers tragedy, and the libretti to the chamber operas Haiku Moments and Cellar Door. Giovanni is a former resident artist at Playwrights Workshop Montreal, a playwright in residence at the Shaw Festival and Tapestry New Opera Works, and the senior playwright in residence for the 2020 Banff Playwrights Lab. Giovanni is currently an MFA candidate at the University of Calgary, and he has also been developing, I asked you about the pronunciation before, but it's Kowloon Bay. Yes, thank you. And it's a prequel to The Nine Dragons with Vertigo Theater, and Salesman in China with Stratford Festival and the Banff Playwrights Lab. So welcome, Giovanni. I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce Amanda, and I'll be on this side if there's any other technical difficulties.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa. Welcome to everybody watching out there on YouTube. I'm also, I'm gonna gloss over Amanda's bio and tell you that it's all there on www.amandalyn.com.
Amanda Emlyn.
Sorry?
Amanda Emlyn.
Oh, I'm sorry, Amanda Emlyn. Thank you. AmandaEmlyn.com. It's a great website. Her bio's there. And this way we have more time to ask each other questions. Hello, yeah. Amanda. It's so good to see you. Thanks. I'm so glad you asked me to do this. And because I've always thought like you were like one of the more interesting artists emerging in Toronto right now. But we actually haven't we haven't connected that many times, right?
No, I think this is like a deja vu now of the pre-conversation we had before the streaming here. But I feel like we crossed paths a couple of times. I think the first time would have been when I saw you in King of the Yees that was the first time, right?
I think so, at the NAC, yeah.
And it was a really funny kind of coincidence because I had gone, I think, on the advice of David Yee to go see that play.
Yeah.
And
you listen to David Yee? Never listen to David Yee.
That's last time. But it was worth it because I saw the play. It was great. You were great in it. And I also, at the time, was directing the play that your partner, Leona Brody, had written. I was directing it for a student theater company. So that was kind of a nice little small world moment running into you two there.
Yeah, and I you recognize like somebody in your crew recognized Liana in the crowd?
Yes, yeah.
From her jacket bios?
I think
That's
it was
so
because
wild.
at that point we had done like a panel that Liana had participated in, so people had seen her face. It wasn't just
Okay.
like a creeper kind of situation.
Interesting Cahoots trivia. You directed The Vic, which was her
Yeah,
first play, right?
yeah.
And that actually was produced by Cahoots in 2000. It was programmed by my predecessor at Cahoots, Guillermo Verdecchia. It was directed by his predecessor, David Oye, and it starred rising star Marjorie
Yeah.
Chan, who went on to run Cahoots and now runs the universe. So
Yeah, and when we were allowed to be in the office at Cahoots, my desk was actually underneath the poster of the Vic, so it
cool.
was
Cool.
very good.
Yeah, but then I think we also chatted a second time because you wanted to talk about your cool play between a walk and a hot pot, and I remember because I guess you'd known that I'd written something that
Yeah,
was kind of food centered.
yeah. So I was working on my very first play, Between a Walk and a Hot Pot. This was while I was in, I think, my 4th year at Queen's. And I connected with some professors who recommended that I read your play, A Taste of Empire. And then past that, I was like, in my 4th year of university, I was in a big, like, let's reach out to everyone phase. So I'm glad I did. And we had a nice conversation. I remember you gave me some like really good advice on writing a play about food. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that makes me happiest is when I was just kind of coming into the professional ranks, meeting everyone, would take you maybe a day or two because there's like a dozen people. And for you to actually meet, everyone is in the whole, like, especially the Asian Canadian theater crowd now. I mean, it's flourished so much. It excites me so much to see how it sprung up in Toronto and Vancouver, you there in Kingston and yeah, it's well, actually, I don't. What is your hometown? Actually, is it?
So I grew up in Pickering, same hometown as Sean Mendes, although he says he's from Toronto. He's from Pickering. Yeah, so I grew up in Pickering, and then I went to Kingston for school, and now I'm living in Toronto. That's
Yeah, and when you were like in high school, did you get to see a lot? Like, did you come into Toronto to see a lot of theater? What was your kind of early exposure to theater like?
Yeah, I really didn't go into Toronto too much before living there. I went like on some school trips. I remember going to YPT like on numerous occasions. I think they had a partnership with my high school actually. So I went to YPT, but other than that, I really didn't have that much familiarity with the Toronto theater scene. And when I moved to Kingston and I started hearing about, like in my drama classes, about all these cool companies and like hearing about Food Gen, and like that was kind of a big moment for me. So I started reading those plays and like learning about the companies and following the companies, but I hadn't actually gotten the opportunity to see a lot of those shows until I moved to Toronto, which was 2018, I think.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And when did you catch the bug? Were you a high school kid going through high school at all? A theater kid? I mean, a theater kid going through high school? Did you do shows then, or what made you interested?
Yeah, I was definitely a theater kid in high school. I remember by grade 12, actually, in my second semester, I pretty much went to the theater in first period and I was there until like after school till like 5 p.m. I would go and have my like first 2 classes in the theater, and then I would eat lunch there, and then I would do like 2 more classes there because I was co-oping in a drama class. I was taking musical theater and I was taking vocals. So I was like basically
Co-oping, like, does that mean you had a placement with a company or something, or?
it was a co-op in a grade 9 drama class, so I actually was still like within the high school.
Oh,
Yeah, but like helping out with the drama teacher there. And then
okay.
going to Queen's, I originally was going to major in stage and screen. And Queen's does this thing that some schools do now where you don't have to choose your major till after the first year, which was really good for me because then I could kind of explore a little bit more. Because like when you're 17, how are you supposed to know what you want to do for the rest of your life? And by the end of my first year, I was kind of debating between majoring in stage and screen or majoring in psychology, which is my mom's watching. Hi, mom, which is what my mom does. And at the end, I ended up going with psychology. And my reasoning at the time was if I want to go into psychology, I definitely need to have an undergraduate degree. If I want to go into theater, I can probably get away with not having it. And now looking back on that, like, yes, obviously, I think I missed out on things because I don't have a theater education. And I'm not trying to say that that's like a valueless path of education to take, but I do think that I have a bit of a different perspective, I guess, because I went through a different
I
program.
didn't go to theater school either, so even now, 32 years after my undergrad, I'm actually learning how theater works. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's still lots of time. And then by my 4th year, I was still doing psychology, but by my 4th year, I was like, no, I'm going to give theater a try. So that's how I ended up here.
And I got to ask you, because when I was AD at Gateway in Richmond, Richmond is a city that is like more Chinese than Markham. Imagine Markham, but more Markham than Markham. That's Richmond.
Yeah.
So when I talked to the high school kids, it was easily 50 to 70% Chinese Canadian. And I could see so many of these 16, 17, 8-year-olds who love theater, but to them, it was just like going into theater for school would be like, going to Saturn. Like it was so out of the realm of possibility because of parental expectations. And did you ever feel that? Like, going like, oh, your mom's watching, so you can wink if you want to,
No, I feel very fortunate in that. And this is something I joke about in my play, that they're cool with it, but they're not cool. My parents in real life legitimately have been very supportive.
Oh.
Yeah, which has been really nice. I think that I did feel pressure. I mean, obviously I majored in psychology in first year, so I did feel that pressure at that point in time. But I think that was, yeah, so and talking to my mom now too, like she has such a creative bent to her. And it's interesting, these conversations that we have. It's like, if you were in my shoes, like if you had been a generation later than you are, like maybe you would have ended up doing what I'm doing, or doing more writing and all that. So it's, yeah, I think it's nice in the way that we've kind of, like, I feel like with each generation, we've been like more and more able to do what we want to do, which has been really nice.
Well, how many generations back, like, does it, with the first coming to Canada, was that your parents' generation or their parents' generation, or?
So both my parents came to Canada, like they were born in Taiwan and then they came to Canada. My mom was quite like an infant basically, and my dad was also quite young. So I'm always like, I'm not quite sure how to measure whether I'm like first or second generation, and it's different depending on what website you're looking at. But yeah.
I totally get you, because I'm technically an immigrant, but I'm probably like your folks. I came here when I was an infant, so I'm kind of like a CBC, but I technically was. Yeah. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. So,
Yeah.
well, actually, mentioning Taiwan, before we get with the hard hitting questions, we said that we would do this as a bubble tea date. So
yes.
Tell me what you were drinking, Amanda.
I just have the original pearl milk tea, less ice, 50% sweet.
Yeah.
The thing is, I usually want to like get something a little bit more fancy, but I've been trying to save money.
Check it. We're like twins. Taiwanese, 50% ice, 50% sweet, and the pearls.
Wow. And we had we were just mentioning before we went live too that we both ordered from a place that had food, and I had my Taiwanese braised pork.
In honor of you, my Taiwanese Canadian friend, popcorn chicken.
Incredible.
Spicy. Although anybody who knows me is going to say that's not in honor of her. He gets that anyway. So.
But this time it was dedicated to me, and that's what's important.
Mm-hmm.
But.
So. Mm-hmm. You're at school. You can go psychology. You can go theater. What tipped you in one direction or the other?
I mean, it's so hard to pinpoint like what the decision factor was. I think that I've always been very drawn towards performance, and people joke that like, yeah, all kids want to perform, like that's not unique. But like when I was a kid, I was always putting on plays. Like I used to cut up my family photos to make programs. My mom would be like, please don't do that. And I would like make my brother dress up, and there's all these home videos. So I think that I've always kind of had a bent towards storytelling in some form. I also wrote a lot when I was a kid. And then
in high school, do you have a crowning glory performance? Like, were you in Greece, or what did you do?
I was in Greece actually, but I'm not that good of a singer. So I was one of the cheerleaders, and there was one point where in the background of a scene, I was like, I came up with this bit where like I'm gonna do a cartwheel, but it's gonna be really bad, and I'm gonna like land on my butt. And I got told by the director that I was being too distracting, and I had to stop.
Like, yeah, that was my intent. Of course, I'm being distracting. You're supposed to look at me when I do that.
Yeah. Yeah, this is kind of delving into like a bit deeper territory here, but I feel like I've always had the question with myself, like I'm a performer. I wouldn't say I'm like primarily an actor really anymore. Like I don't really go to auditions. I've done performances as like an iteration of myself more often than not. And through high school, it's hard to tell whether I wasn't being cast because I wasn't that good of an actor or if it was because I wasn't white. And so I think that may have like shaped me in some way in terms of like the direction I wanted to go. Because when I came to Toronto and I started to identify more as a writer, it wasn't like something I chose, like, oh, I want to be a playwright. It was kind of like, well, I need to work, I need to do something. And you can't really like you can just start writing whenever you want. Whereas with acting, you have to wait for someone to cast you in something. So that was kind of my way in.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's amazing how that's still the case, I think, to just get by, because theater's so brutal. You have to wear a lot of hats. I mean,
Yeah.
and I, I noticed along with your artistry, you're at Cahoots, you're at Nightwood, you're at Kingston a lot, doing the blog for Kingston Theater Alliance. So that seems to be the norm if you want to survive. And I mean, it certainly was 30 years ago, and it sounds like it hasn't changed a whole lot.
Yeah. And also I think that like for a lot of people in my generation too, like there's less of an interest in, maybe this is talking to you generally, but less of an interest in specializing.
Yeah.
And when I was in university, actually, I was in my fourth year when I was trying to decide between theater and psychology. I remember thinking to myself, oh, I could be so much better at this if I just picked one and stuck with it. If I just like committed to something, I feel like I could be better. And I went to a career counselor at Queen's and I kind of like said all that to them. And they were like, well, some people just do more than one thing and that's okay. And I was like, wow, I think I just needed that validation of, yeah, like you don't need to follow a career in the traditional sense, I guess.
Okay. Well, I guess once you're at Queen's, you're starting to see more theater, probably in Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal. And are there any kind of artists whose practice, you admire, you want to emulate, these kind of non-specialist type artists? Or
Oh man, that's really hard in terms of like their career path, kind of.
or even their work, either their work or just, oh wow, she's doing a whole lot of stuff and she juggles it all and keeps in the air. That's kind of cool. I want to be like that. You know what I mean? Like, or you just like their art. Either one. Yeah.
Oh, that's tough. I mean, I have a really, really deep respect for Marjorie, who is one of the former ADs of Cahoots and is now the AD at Theatre Passe Muraille. But I would say it's more in her way of working, which is as opposed to like what she's doing explicitly. And I find that I tend to look up to a lot of leaders that lead with like this great care and kindness, which isn't necessary to be a good leader, but I certainly really appreciate it. And I think that that's kind of like the type of career I want to emulate, where it's not so much about like going from A to B, doing this, doing that. It's more like kind of it, like reacting to what I see around me and my peers and like in the people, and my mentors as well too.
Yeah, that's a good one to emulate.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and what about these days, like in Toronto, who are the artists who really excite you, like, or you say either within your generation or more established, who you say I want to jam with that person?
Well, when I was in Fujian's kitchen unit, I had the pleasure of meeting a bunch of cool young Asian Canadian artists, which was like a first for me, like getting to write with other Asian people, because I was in Pickering and then in Kingston. So both those times there weren't a lot of East Asians. And I've really formed like a nice bond with like the unit from Kitchen. So that's Sai Masakunis and Jacob Lin. And we all still like get together and write as well. And that was something that I had to discover, I think, when I first came to Toronto, because like I said, when I was in my fourth year of university, I was doing a lot of reaching out, especially to people who are like much older than me, like you, like David and Marjorie. Like I reached out to all those people. And then I kind of got to a point where I got to Toronto where I realized, oh, like I should also be reaching out to people who are like my peers, because those are the people I'm actually going to be working with
Yeah.
and the people that I'm going to be growing with. So I really, really value those friendships. And similar to being in Nightwood's Young Innovators too, like there's so many cool artists from my cohort that I'm like super excited to hopefully one day work with too.
Great. Well, let's talk about the piece that you're working on now, where we had first met, because you're working on Between a Walk and a Hot Pot, which is if you go to amandamlin.com, you can find out more about that. But Cahoots is developing it, am I right?
Yeah.
Congrats, that's
On
great.
the partner.
Well, congratulations on that, because I just thought it was such an exciting. Why don't you tell people who are listening in a bit about the piece that you're working on?
Yeah, so it's I guess it's almost solo show based on myself as a person, but it's over time become more of a character, and it's Asian Canadian dinner theater. So the idea is you come in, you eat hot pot with like during the show, and the character of Amanda kind of like walks you through how like Asians have like become more prominent and like the history of that through arts and theater. But it's also kind of I wanted to kind of like take a diving off point from previous identity plays that have happened, because I don't think that just plain representation is really doing the trick anymore. So I kind of wanted to take a more nuanced look at like the pressure that's placed on marginalized artists to kind of like to represent, but also to like fit the molds of what people expect from you. And also like appropriation in terms of food, in terms of art, and in terms of like how funding is sent out around the arts community too. So I've been wrestling a lot with the question of like, who's this play for? And I think it's hard because I think you're especially asked that if you're like not a white playwright, you're especially asked like, are you like, who's this play for? And I think that now looking back on it, having like grown a lot with this play over the past 3 years, I think that it's for people who are like my generation of like now entering a workforce in this current time and kind of like navigating how to carve out space for yourself, but also take care of the people around you. Sorry, that was a little bit rambly, but
No,
I have a
great
thought on this because we just had a workshop yesterday, so very fresh in my mind.
No, I love what you're saying about who's coming in too, because I mean it's an infuriating question that you are asked to justify your existence as an artist in a way that some of your white counterparts aren't, or you're asked questions like, for example, like Marjorie, she came out to direct her play China Doll, her first play China Doll, out at Gateway last fall, and the local Vancouver theater writer asked her, "What is the access point for Western audiences?" And it just made me want to scream. And her answer was the best answer you could ever give. She said, "The front door."
I remember that. That was like iconic. That was very good.
Yeah, but just the whole notion that people who look like us don't constitute a Western audience, that's a problematic construction.
Mm-hmm.
But also the presumption that you need an access point to that. Like nobody ever asks what's the access point to a Hannah Moscovich play.
Yeah.
It's just a play. It's well written. You like it, you don't like it, whichever. But this idea that someone needs a little crutch to come in and to enjoy an Amanda Lynn piece is kind of inherently insulting. So
Yeah.
So you had a workshop. How'd it go? It was yesterday or today? Or
yeah, yesterday, like literally at this point, 24 hours ago, we would have been just finishing up. So very fresh. It was good. Yeah. I think that it's definitely for me, like the furthest, like I feel like the closest to completion, whatever that is. Sorry.
I haven't been following the development. Are you performing in it or directing it or both, or how's it working? Like,
I'm meant to perform in it. But in the workshops, I usually hire another actor to read for Amanda so I can listen, because otherwise that's too many things for my brain to do at once, especially my COVID brain can only really focus on a little bit at a time. Yeah, sorry, where was I?
I'm sorry, you were saying how it went, you were excited.
Oh, yes, yeah. And now I think that the next step is going to be, like the world has been changing so quickly, especially with COVID. And this play has changed so much because it really like grew with me. When I first started writing it when I was 17, it was very much like, oh, I'm just gonna like share a story about like food and culture, and it's just gonna be about me and that's it. And then as I started to question, like, why am I actually doing this? Like, is this actually the story I want to tell, or do I just feel like because I'm Asian, I have to tell a story about being Asian? And so those questions kind of like got woven into the piece. And now it's a question of like moving forward, like making sure that the play is still like trying to find a way to like make it still speak to the moment that we're in, because it's so like based on like the current moment, but also like I might need to like freeze the age at some point of the character Mandy. Like she can't just continuously expand with me also, because that would be like, then it would never be done.
And in terms of how you're structuring the production, are you developing it under this idea that there's going to be a vaccine and things will revert to normal, or are you kind of permanently adapting it to the realities of the pandemic now?
I mean, it's really hard because it involves eating food together. So
Yeah.
it's really not a COVID friendly play. And I've had people recommend to me like, oh, you could like do it at home, but like mail everybody the hot pot ingredients beforehand. But then that kind of assumed like everyone would need to have a butane burner. So I like, at least in my brain, I think that it's something that will hopefully happen in person. And I think that whenever it can happen, it'll be a really nice way to kind of return to live theater. I mean, I've personally, I don't know about you, but I've been thinking about the meals that I want to have when this is over, and hot pot and like dim sum and all those communal meals are like way up there.
Hot pot, yeah, that's funny. I was just thinking about the other day, like buffets and hot pots. I just how much I miss them. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
dim sum, yeah. When you're doing the workshop, then you're not dealing with the food element of the production. Then I guess because of the, or are you? I mean, how's that working?
Well, originally we were planning for a workshop that was like going to happen in person, and then we were going to be able to play with some of the more physical aspects. But then now, like now we have to do it on Zoom. So we kind of focused the workshop last night more on the text. But I have done it with the food once. It was the very first time I ever did it in Kingston. It was like, I guess 2018, and it was like a pilot production was how we were marketing it. And we tried it with the food, and it was so much going on at once. Like I was really happy with how it went as like a test run, but like as an actor, I should be warming up before the play, chopping the Napa cabbage. And that's what was going on in that production. So it was definitely like a lot to handle. So I'm looking forward to, I think the next step whenever we can meet in person is to like have some workshop rehearsal time just around the food and figuring out how that works.
How does it work in terms of like, is your audience like size capped at a certain number and everyone is around their own individual, like how does it work?
Yeah, we've done it with really small audience sizes in the past. And I think that another option would be to have like a certain amount of people who are eating at the table and then another group of people who are watching but aren't eating, because that kind of like maybe not everyone wants to eat too. Like I don't want to assume or like can't join us for the meal for whatever reason. So I think that could be a nice way to like have a slightly bigger audience and also accommodate lots of different kinds of audience members.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And should it go to a full production, would you want to perform it? Would you want to be the director? Like what role do you see yourself taking?
I think I would want to perform it, but I would not want to direct it. I definitely like that's a bit like I think I would need an outside opinion as well to it's not just like all like me bouncing around in my own head.
Do you have a director in mind? You know, you can chat me if you don't want to say, on camera or anything, but I'm just curious if there's like a director who you're thinking would be great at. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been talking to Esther Jen about potentially directing it, and I think it's going to hopefully be a really nice partnership. Fantastic. Yeah, in the past, Marjorie's actually directed it as well for a stage reading.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's so great. Well, that's a great pedigree right there with all those artists attached to it.
You're very fortunate.
Yeah. And what else is going on the artistic front for you? Like, are you working on any other pieces as an artist?
I just finished taking a class with Ghostlight with Andrew Kushner on verbatim theater. So in that class, I started writing a verbatim theater piece. Like, I mean, like it was more of like a project for the class, and now I kind of have to decide whether I want to take that further or not. But definitely right now, my main focus is on Hot Pot, and then also, I'm sure lots of people have been feeling like this, but through the pandemic, I've been, I think, focused a lot more on my like personal growth rather than necessarily like feeling the pressure to write all the time. I've been writing, but nothing like that good or like project worthy. And I think it's been kind of a nice break for me actually from the pressure.
I was curious. I was because I talked to a lot of artists, in your generation. They never knew there was a different gear other than sixth gear, and the pandemic kind of forces you to slow down, be a bit more contemplative, maybe to take stock of like what kind of perspective has COVID given you in terms of what you want to do, or is it has there been any kind of positive? Does it give you any idea of how to envision the big picture?
Yeah, I think it's definitely given me a different perspective. And like you said, like I've also been talking to a bunch of people who are kind of my generation where our entire personality and like our self-worth is kind of how good is your career going? And that's not really healthy at all. So like having everything slow down was a really good opportunity for me to kind of like check back in with like me, the person, not just me, the artist. And I'm finding I'm actually going back to a lot of the activities that I did when I was in high school. Like
Like what?
I'm reading again, like I'm playing a lot of video games, and I'm finding that like really artistically fulfilling, actually. Like it's filling the tank a little bit. And also just like I think that my big struggle right now that I'm trying to overcome is kind of like being able to be okay with myself when I'm not being productive. Like I think that that's a very capitalist mindset, right? Like you're only worth something if you're producing, and like you have to continue to prove yourself all the time. Otherwise, like you're like you feel worthless or whatever. And I mean, it's so easy to say that and really, really hard to do. Because sometimes I'll have like a really busy day at work and I'll finally finish after like all day Zoom calls, and then I'll sit down to relax and I'll feel really guilty for relaxing. I'm like, why is that the case?
Yeah, that's pretty classic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I
and
think a lot of unlearning of that.
has any of the reading given you any kind of nourishment? Like, have you read anything that you've found just made you curious about the world, or thankful, or?
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite pandemic reads so far has been The Skin We're In by Desmond Cole, which was, I don't know if you've read it, but it's really good. And it's also very much a Toronto perspective because Desmond lives in Toronto right now. And it's about, that's the tagline is a year of Black resistance or something along those lines. So it goes month by month. So I really was excited about the format of it too, but also then the content was just very beautiful. It like covered a lot of different topics. And it also like, it really captured the spirit of resistance in a way that was still held hope. So I really liked that. I would recommend it to anybody. What else have I been reading? I've been rereading some books that I liked in high school, and it was interesting to kind of see how the like philosophy of those books has really shaped me, like being able to reflect back on that. Yeah.
Cool. And you're close enough, you're able to see your folks during all of this, right? And Pickering and.
Yeah, it's been the ability to work from home makes it a lot easier to like see my parents, because then we can all be together and we're all kind of working from home at this point. And I know that's like something that I feel very, very privileged to be able to do that. So yeah, it's been a lot more family time than usual. We've been playing Mario Party as
I
a
don't know.
yeah. We're teaching my mom how to play, and she's won a couple of times now. So she's like starting to become a threat in Mario Party.
Right on.
Yeah.
Cool. It occurred to me too, like, the pandemic, it's just like, God, it's also an opportunity to kind of rethink how all things are structured in a really profound way. Our notion that, that you have this kind of flagship institution in every major Canadian city, or in Toronto's case, a few flagships, and this whole kind of trickle down theory, and it's the big A houses with large subscriber bases that have been hit the hardest because they rely so much on earned revenue, and because they have the kind of overhead they do for bricks and mortar, and it's the indies that have become more nimble. I guess if they made you grand poobah of all Canadian theater, what would you like? Do you have any thoughts, or your you and your cohort, do they talk about, this is where the system has to go to survive in the future?
And that's such a big question. I don't know if I can answer it in terms of like my advice for the industry. But in terms of like what I'm seeing this year, I am really, really, I think that the pandemic has been a nice moment for some theater companies to kind of reevaluate like the service that they're providing to people. And it's been really, really lovely to see theater companies like such as Cahoots that have kind of pivoted and taken this opportunity to really focus on the community and what the community needs. So with Cahoots doing like, for example, Small Change, which was like set up to give micro grants to people for just like essential needs. Like you don't need to create art to get this money. Like we're just giving it to you, go buy groceries. And I thought that was like quite radical. And just seeing people, like there's just so much more, and maybe it's getting hard as we're getting like more weary through the pandemic, but I've just noticed a lot more grace, I guess, than usual, like a lot of care for people. And I think that returning it to that, as opposed to like, let's fill the theater, or like, let's sell this many tickets, or let's make money. I think that could be the way to go. I don't know. I doubt myself so much when making like big declarative statements like that, but that's definitely what I'm interested in. And the theater companies that have been like inspiring me have been doing that kind of work.
Well, you got a unique perspective as a development coordinator at Cahoots, and also that hat at Nightwood. Like, I mean, what changes have you noticed in terms of getting that kind of support, fundraising, in kind? What's changed since COVID?
Well, in terms of fundraising, it's definitely like a bit of a tightrope walk right now, because obviously like there are so many things that need funding, and a lot of the foundations have pivoted to kind of serve first responder kind of services, which makes total sense. So it's definitely a little bit tough in that way, and also like it's hard to be asking people to donate all the time when it's such a like financially precarious time for a lot of people. Sorry, that's a bit of a bummer. What else? What was the question again?
No, you really. I was just curious. I mean, I wanted to know how it changed, and predictably, it sounds like it's much harder. It's hard to ask, and it's fraught with a lot of I guess feeling of guilt that you're asking when there's so much need all around. So
yeah, and then at the same time, I guess the more positive side of it too is there is like a lot, like I said, a lot of grace. And for example, like at Nightwood, when we had to cancel one of the productions there, and I had the marvelous task of emailing everyone who had a ticket and saying like, hey, like we unfortunately had to cancel the show. Would you mind, if you can, donating the ticket price back to us? Because it would really, really help theaters in a time where it's gonna there's no like end date for this for theaters. We don't really know when its live performance is going to be available again.
yeah.
And the majority of people were like did donate the money back to the theater, so it was really like heartwarming, and a lot of messages of care too, of like stick through this. I hope you're doing well. So yeah, I guess that's a bright side as well.
That's great. Yeah, and where do you see yourself in 5 years, in 10 years? Do you, I know, because it sounds like you have a lot of interest. Is it going to focus or stay intentionally broad?
I don't know if I have like a 5 or a 10-year plan, but I have kind of thought about what I think would be a fulfilling life for me. And again, like this pandemic has really taught me that making plans is like, like you don't really know if it, like you have no way to know that it'll actually follow through. But I do think that I'm interested in artistic leadership. I think that kind of aligns with my desire to carve out space for people and serve and support artists. In terms of like me personally, I would love to have like a golden retriever. Love to have a glass chessboard. Those are my life goals right now.
Wow. I love golden retriever puppies. They're like the cutest. Those and black lab puppies are just like, yeah. So you'd go right from puppy then, I guess, or would you?
I mean, I'd like to think that I would adopt a puppy that's not go to a breeder.
Right. Yeah, good. Are you a chess player?
I'm not very good at chess, actually. I mean, like I'm okay. I have like an average skill at chess, but I find that my problem with chess, I was talking about this with my brother, who's much better at chess than I am, is my problem is that I tend to like think of something that I want to do. Like I think of a move and then I kind of focus on that and I don't realize like other threats that are coming towards me. So I'm not the greatest at chess, but I think that having a glass chessboard would just really, really make me feel complete.
I know, I totally get. Yeah. That was on my wish list at one point when I didn't get a glass one. I got like a really nice one though, because and I'm kind of like you. I just like the idea. Well, it's gotten really sexy again, hasn't it? Because of the Queen's Gambit.
Yeah, I haven't started watching that. I need to.
Yeah, but apparently it's because it's from. I remember I got interested. Like there was a movie Searching for Bobby Fischer. It was like a Jodie Foster movie maybe 20 years ago. And that was the last time that chess got really, really sexy and everybody wanted to play. And I think that's when I got my board and, got my game from here to maybe there. And now it's like back. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, well, definitely a lot of games going on right now in the pandemic. Anything that you can keep yourself entertained with.
Oh, yeah. Other than more Mario Party, do you have any recommendations for?
Oh man, I at the beginning of this the I guess, beginning-ish of the pandemic, I downloaded a indie bundle. Like all the proceeds were going towards, I think, Black Lives Matter in the US somewhere. And there were a lot of really, really cool, like small games. I'm really into storytelling video games, especially like as a theater artist. I think that there's a lot of lessons you can take from storytelling games, as like not only in the actual writing and the text, but also in how they use the design to tell the story, like the environmental storytelling of video games. Some of my favorites would be, I really like Night in the Woods. In terms of like the actual text, that's some of my favorite writing in a video game. There's a really cool game called Tacoma, which I actually haven't played in a while, but I bring it up because it's actually based on Sleep No More, like the theater play in New York. Yeah, so it's really cool to see how like video games and theater are kind of inspiring each other. Essentially, the game is you walk onto a spaceship, and then you see this group of people, and you can kind of follow which character you want, and you hear the story while following them, in the same way as Sleep No More. Yeah.
That's incredible. And is it goal or like you have a task to complete or is it not about winning or losing? You just follow?
Yeah, it's more following the story. And similar, I don't know how familiar you are. Do you play a lot of video games, Giovanni?
I don't play at all, but now that I know that they're not about blowing things up and you can have an experience, I might start getting.
There's some like really, really fantastic storytelling games. There's one that I really like called Gone Home. And the way that works, it's made by the same people who made Tacoma. So you're this university-aged woman, and you come back home. Your parents have just moved to this like mansion in the woods, and you come back home, and you're expecting them to welcome you, and no one's there. So the whole game is you just walking around the house and figuring out what happened to everyone.
Wow.
Yeah, I always thought that would be cool to kind of take and do in a theater setting too. So maybe
have you experienced the joys of online escape room type things yet, or?
I guess not quite an escape room, but I went to this theater company, I guess production company in Kingston called 6 a.m. Productions. They used to do more. I don't know as much about the company, but I think right now they're doing kind of like these murder mystery nights, marketed towards like a corporate event. And so the way that worked was you were in teams, and you could go to different rooms and interview the actors, and then you kind of had to decide who had done it. So similar, yeah.
Yeah, I did it for the first time. It was April Lung and Milton Lim, who it was a company in the UK, and the conceit was that it was a trial, and you got to interview the suspect and all that, and you had to make a decision about, and it was like an escape room essentially, where and I think we're about to do one again, but I find them kind of interesting, and that nice confluence between theater and gaming, and it's.
Yeah, and earlier this summer too, I unfortunately was unable to attend, but they held a conference, the first conference on performance and XR, and it was like literally took place in XR. So like if you wanted to go to the conference, you could like buy it, you could put on a headset and like be in the conference room with other conference goers from like all across the world. So that definitely, like, especially with the pandemic, a lot more investment in that kind of storytelling.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to wrap up with question, because I am a Torontonian at heart, and I haven't lived there since 2012, and I miss it terribly. What are your favorite things about Toronto?
Favorite things about Toronto? Definitely. I mean, the reason that I chose to come here was for the theater scene.
Yeah.
Especially like after living in places like living in Pickering and living in Kingston. And Kingston does have like a really lovely, they have like some great theaters there and a lovely community theater scene too. But especially in terms of being able to work with people, like work first of all, like again, like I said, there's not that many East Asian people in Kingston right now, so it's nice to have that kind of community in Toronto, and also just like a lot more diversity in terms of the shows, and like both in the content and also in the form in Toronto. So I appreciate that. I live close to two really great parks right now. I'm at like Christie Station, so I'm really close to Christie Pitts and really close to Bickford Park, and especially like when we can't hang out with friends inside, I've been taking a lot of advantage of the green space in Toronto. I love that I can get like lots of different kinds of food here. That's great. I live in Koreatown too, so that's been like lots and lots of good eating. I feel like I'm never going to catch up. Every time I try a new restaurant, like a new one opens. Yeah, I guess that comes back to hot pot a little. I play hot pot a little bit. It's like the food and the theater.
Yeah. Well, you've made me a little homesick, especially for that area. And I can't wait for things to get back to normal because I really want to see your show. I'm hoping, I'm hoping it gets done. I'm hoping it gets done in travels. I mean, if I'm not able to come to Toronto, I really hope it has legs and you're able to come out here to Calgary or further. If you went to Vancouver with that piece, I guarantee you'd have a very, very enthusiastic audience waiting for you. But,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And yeah, I also hope that at some point in the near future, we're able to meet in person, which I guess we haven't done since that fated day at the National Arts Center in 2018.
Yeah. And I'm sure Liana would want to say hi to and ask all about your experiences doing her play. So
Yeah.
Great. Well, I think we should just, I guess, wrap things up. And thank you again. Thanks again.
Thank you, Giovanni. I'm so excited that you said yes and that you're here. It's been so lovely to get to know you better and to talk a bit more.
It's been great getting to know you, and I hope it's the first of more conversations over the bubble tea.
Yeah.
To everybody on YouTube, thanks so much. Oh, tell everyone again about what's happening on December 1st on Giving Tuesday.
So Giving Tuesday is December 1st. We're doing a little campaign called Give a Cahoot. I was very proud of that pun personally. If you have the ability right now, I know it's a really tough time, but if you have the ability to support Cahoots, we have some really, really fantastic programming happening. So there's Crossing Gibraltar, which is a program for newcomer and refugee artists. There's the Envy Ensemble, which is a creation group of non-binary artists, and that and like so much more. So your support to Cahoots will really be benefiting like a large group of people and all these artists. So
where do we go to give?
Yes, that would be helpful. I believe there's a link in the description of this video, and if not, then maybe someone will put it in the chat. Canada Helps for the Cahoots Cahoots Canada Helps page is where you can go to give. But also, if you just go to cahoots.ca, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a big donate button, and that'll take you right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again. Thanks to everybody on YouTube who's been watching. Make sure you go and give generously to Cahoots. And until we meet again.